from the Brush and Boltgun. Today I'm going to be doing a quick tutorial on how to paint a Scythes of the Emperor Space Marine. If you'd like to support the channel, my Ko-fi and Patreon pages are linked below. Now onto the video.
This is a finished Scythes of the Emperor Space Marine, primaris intercessor. Got the nice vibrant yellow against the black of the armour. And we've also got the chapter badge on one shoulder, and there'll be a video on Sunday of how to do that start to finish. So this is the initial miniature, and we're going to be using Vallejo Black to paint the black parts of the miniature first. Now he has been sprayed. I had a sprue of intercessors where this particular part had been sprayed with, I think it was like TT Combat's yellow spray, or maybe Army Painter yellow, not the demonic yellow, that's way too bright for these. And then the blue was actually Macragge blue spray, because I'd sprayed another on the sprue with those colours. So if you can get it sprayed yellow initially, you've got to paint all the black over that. Or if you spray it black, you've got to paint the yellow over the black. So it swings and roundabouts which way you want to do it. So I'm using Citadel Averland Sunset to paint the power pack and also the torso. So as I say, it's a tricky decision deciding which colour to spray it. If you can spray the parts separately, then that would be ideal. Like spray the arms, the head and the legs black, and then spray the torso yellow. But then as these come in not quite as multi-part as they used to, so you've got the torso bits joined onto parts of the legs and things like that, you're still left with the same dilemma of which parts to spray with which colour. So I went with yellow because black covers everything. The next colour we're going to use is Citadel Retributive armour. That's going to be to paint the Aquila on his chest. So just give that a nice smooth coat of this, which shouldn't be too hard because it's a wicked colour. And then we can move on to the next one. Now depending on which miniature you're painting, depends on whether you've got any scrolls or anything like that. There's a tiny little scroll on the bolt rifle here. There's also a little purity seal on the other side of it. So you can give the parchment and the scroll work a good coat of Rakarth flesh. That'll be good to go. Next up, it's a little bit of Citadel Khorne Red. This is going to be used to do the wax section of the purity seal and also his eye lenses. We're going to use Citadel Leadbelcher. I'm going to use this to do all of the silvery metallic parts on the bolt rifle, the two little tubes on his helm. Also you've got the handle of the bolt pistol poking out the holster on his back. So you can get all those done with Leadbelcher and move on to the next colour. Final base colour is Citadel Baneblade Brown. I'm going to use this to paint the pouches, the holster, his belt and the rifle sling. Start off with the shades and contrasts. We're going to use Citadel Contrast Snakebite Leather, which is by far my favourite contrast that they do. I'm going to use this to do the belt and the sling and the pouches, all the bits that we've just done with Baneblade Brown. Just give them a good coat of Snakebite Leather. You'll get the darker parts in the recesses, and it gives you a nice little base to do a little bit of highlighting and scuffing on. Now we're going to use some Citadel Null Oil. This is just going to be to do all of the silvery metallics, so nice quick on this. Just give them a reasonable coat of this to get in all the recesses, get those details standing out. Then we can move on to the next one. Seraphim Sepia is coming next. We're just going to use this on the parchment of the Purity Seal, and also the little bit of scroll work on the other side of the bolt rifle. A little bit of a secret shade, this one, because I've not shown the bottle. It is Citadel Khorne Crimson that we're using. Should just give the eye lenses and the Purity Seal wax section a coat of the Khorne Crimson. That'll be all good. Now I'm going to use a little bit of Citadel Uriel Yellow shade, which is probably my least used shade. But you're going to coat all of the yellow with Uriel Yellow. I'll give you that orangey yellow shade in the recesses without making it too orange, like it would do if you used Fugan Orange or similar. I'm going to start working on his body, so it is going to be Citadel Averland Sunset we're returning to. So what we're going to do here is, as we're painting the Averland Sunset back on, think about where the light is coming from. So it's mainly going to be coming from above, the way I'm painting it here. So you want to leave the underside shaded and the recesses where it's not going to be catching any light shaded too. So you can tell that I'm doing the areas where the light will be catching more of. And that's how you want to approach doing the lighting on your miniatures. It's a very quick and easy way of doing it. If you want to get a rough idea of where that's going to be, just shine a torch or shine a light directly above them, and you'll be able to tell the areas that catch the light more than the rest. This is now Uriel Yellow from Citadel. We're just going to again highlight those areas that are going to be catching the light more. So it's going to be the edges that will be catching more light than the bits around them. So in some cases you're going to be doing the bottom parts of it, like that armour that goes over the abdomen, and on the chest you're going to be doing the lower sides of those a little bit, because they have areas that would shade them from above. And then the areas above, on the sort of top of the torso and that kind of thing, you'll be highlighting those too. Now I'm going to use a little bit of Citadel Flash Gitz Yellow to do a final sort of highlight or area highlight on these. So you're hardly doing anything with this really, it's just adding a few little lighter and brighter yellow sections to each area. Maybe about 25% of the previous layer we're going to be doing with this, so not too much at all really. Just enough to make that stand out and be a little bit brighter. Now we're going to be using a little bit of Citadel Dorn Yellow just to do some edge highlights. So you want to be thinking about which edges you want to be doing this on as well. I tend not to do highlights the same way as Games Workshop, where they'll have the highlights going around every single edge. I don't really like that. I like to have the edges that would be catching light, because depending on how you do them, can look a little bit Tron-like sometimes. So you've got those glowing areas all the way around each panel and things, but if you highlight it on the edge that'd be catching the light more, you can't go wrong with that. So now I'm going to work on the next larger area colour, which is going to be Vallejo Black. We're just going to use this to touch up all the black areas that may have got some smudges from the other base coats and things like that as the miniature's gone on. Next up, it's Vallejo German Grey, and you're going to be painting all the areas like you did with the yellow that will be catching the most light. So you want to leave some of the black in the recesses, and you're going to be using this to catch all the panels and different parts of the battle plate leaving the recesses in black and the undersides in black too. Good thing about the German grey is it's dark enough to not be too noticed when you've painted it on the miniature, but also light enough to highlight. Now I'm going to use some Citadel Mechanicus standard grey, and all this is to do edge highlights on the black areas. So like we've done with the previous highlights on the yellow, when I've been discussing where the light catches it, you want to be catching the edges that would be catching the light. Now we'll just make those details stand out as though the light is coming from above and catching those edges, which makes the miniature look pretty good. Next up, we're going to use Citadel Retributive armour and reapply some colour to that Aquila on his chest. Same as always, go for the areas that are going to be catching the light and leave the shade in the recesses. Now I'm going to use Citadel Liberator Gold, and this is going to be to do the highlights on that gold. So I usually do like about 3 or 4 sections of highlights across the very top of the Aquila, and I do about 50% of each of the feathers, the outer edges of the feathers, just to make those stand out. The final part of the gold is adding a little bit of Vallejo Modeler Chrome to Liberator Gold. And we're just going to do about 50% of the areas where we did the Liberator Gold in the previous layer. This will give that a really nice shine and make those little bits stand out. Time to work on the leather a little bit. I'm going to use Citadel Balor Brown. We're going to be doing little brush strokes on the edges and on the areas that stand out and stick out and are likely to be scuffed, to do a little bit of leather scuffing on these to make it look like they have been through the wars a little bit and they are scraped and scuffed. Good thing is you don't really have to reapply a colour to this, you are just going straight into highlighting because the snakebite leather does all the hard work for you. Absolutely amazing stuff. We want to be doing horizontal strokes on the verticals, vertical on the horizontals, just to give each little part that rough edge. So we're now going to add a little bit of Citadel Rakarth flesh to the Balor Brown. We're just going to do some scuffing a little bit less on the leather areas again, just to make those stand out and look a little bit more worn and scuffed in certain areas. Next up is Citadel Rakarth flesh on its own. We're going to be using this to do the scroll work and the bits of parchment on the purity seal. So you just want to be doing the top edges of each section, leaving the Seraphim Sepia in those recesses so the details stand out. When you're painting this parchment, you want to think about where the light's coming from. So if it's coming from above, you're going to have shaded areas and hardly any little bits of highlighting on those really. Just a few little bits here and there. Next we're going to add a little bit of Vallejo white to lighten up that Rakarth flesh, and then we're just going to do some highlights on the scroll work and the paper bits of the parchment, or parchment bits of the purity seal, however you want to say it. Covering about 50% of the previous layer with these highlights. Just hammer them on and that'll do you. Next it's a little bit of Vallejo Black. We're just going to do some thin lines across the purity seal just to show as though it has a little bit of text on there. Using the thinnest brush I use to do this with a tiny little bit of Vallejo Black on there, that should sort you out. I'm going to use a tiny little bit of Citadel Leadbelcher, and this is just to pick out the edge highlights on some of these metallic parts. So you've got the little buttons and the handle or grip of his pistol that's poking out the holster, little bits on the exhaust, and a fair few bits on the bolt rifle. Now we have Citadel Khorne Red. Just going to reapply this to sort of the back 2/3 of the lens, and then to the purity seal too, picking out the areas where it will be catching the most light, so the top edges of things, and leaving the shade on the underside. To highlight, we're going to use a little bit of Citadel Wazdakka Red. I failed to do the Wazdakka Red on the purity seal on this bit. Just do 50% of the area you've just done with the Khorne Red on the lenses. And then after you've done the pink horror on the lenses, we are going to return to Wazdakka Red, then pink horror for the wax on the purity seal. So a little tiny bit of pink horror here. It's going to be to do like the 50% of the Wazdakka Red. And here I'm just adding Wazdakka Red to the purity seal. Now I'm going to use a tiny little bit of pink horror and just add those bits to the wax there. Now I'm going to use a tiny little spot of Vallejo white. We're going to do a really thin line at the back of each lens. So using a really thin brush with hardly any paint on it, so it dries dead quick and you have to keep redoing it. And then also a little tiny speck of white at the front of each lens, just to make those look like they're catching the light. So we're going to start working on the chapter badge here. I'm only going to show the first part of it because there'll be a video from start to finish doing the chapter badge on its own separate one. So you're going to be basically starting with an X on the shoulder pad. You want to get that kind of little curved hook at the bottom there, and then at the top as well, the blades do have a few little notches cut out of the blade and kind of details around where the haft joins the blade itself. So there's plenty to work on with that. Now I'm going to use some Vallejo white, and we're going to do the arrowhead for the tactical designation on his arm, or his pauldron I should say. This is how I'll do the arrows on the shoulder. Very quick and easy way of doing it. And once you've done it a few times as well, obviously the arrows get better and better and better, until eventually you can just knock them out, no bother. The final colour we're going to use is Vallejo Black, and that is just to do the numeral on the arrow. I'm just going to do a large 1 on this, so you've got a nice vertical line, and you've got a little horizontal at the top and the bottom of it, just to get that looking nice. And all you need to do is tidy that up, and you are sorted. So this is the finished miniature. Really pleased with how it turned out. I'm glad to finally get an intercessor done in the colours of some of the miniatures I used to have from Advanced Space Crusade many moons ago. But cracking chapter and cracking colours.
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you have, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future content. Also think about subscribing to some of our other social media, linked below. Thanks very much.
If you like the channel, you enjoy the content and you'd like to support me, my Ko-fi and Patreon pages are linked below. Thanks very much.